Well, good morning and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Peter Frank and I'll be leading our training today. We're going to be looking at creating a custom worship bulletin with the new online Lutheran Service Builder. Again, my name is Peter. I am the Senior Manager of Marketing for Church Supplies here at Concordia Publishing House. I've been working with our Lutheran Service Builder team for a little over 2 years now, and it's been a fantastic experience learning how to use the software, helping others use it. I know that probably a good many of you are more experienced with Lutheran Service Builder than I am, just because we've had it out for use in the church since 2006, starting with our first version. We moved to our second version in 2008, and now this summer we've launched our new online version. And I've been able to work with the team as they've developed this and provide be the voice of the customer to provide that feedback to them. So it's a fantastic group of people that work on this, all the way from our developers to our testers to our support team, and even the folks on my team in marketing who have worked very hard to help you know about it. I have been with the publishing house for about 11 years now. I've been doing software in a broad sense for about 6 years, and before that I did our bookstores. We've had a number of those, so it's been great to see the different workings of the organization. Now, today I am wearing a tie. It's a special day for us here. I don't typically wear a tie for presentations like this, but it is our board of directors meeting, our quarterly meeting. And so we've got our leadership here discussing the continued future of the publishing house. And that's always such a positive meeting to hear the things that come out of that. Yesterday, we officially celebrated the beginning of our 150th year here at the publishing house. So our 149th birthday yesterday, and we'll continue to celebrate that throughout the course of the year. But the Lord has blessed us here with people over the years to provide great tools like Lutheran Service Builder, which we'll dig into today. My contact information is on the screen, and you are welcome to reach out to me at any time. My email is probably the best way to get a hold of me because my phone is right here in my office, and that usually means that I'm not here because I'm in so many meetings. So if you call me and I don't answer, that's why. But don't worry, I'm always willing to follow up. But emails, I get those in my meetings, and I can always respond to them there too. So feel free to reach out at any time. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First off, I'm planning about 50 minutes for this presentation. So I've got a lot of material to cover. We can go really deep into this, but I'm going to try to cut us off at 50 minutes. And when I say us, I mean me. Sometimes I talk a little long on certain subjects. So that leaves 10 minutes at the end for question and answers. And I do ask that you ask questions throughout. I've got a queue up here on the screen that I can kind of pay attention to as we're going through this. That allows me to see how many questions are waiting for me for that 10 minutes at the end. So please ask throughout. I am recording this webinar and we'll be sharing this later on today. So if you are one of those who are watching after the fact, thanks for joining us even though you couldn't be here live. We know that it's a busy time in the church, and there's not usually a slow time in the church, so it's safe to say that at any time during the year. But I know that there's many things to do, and I appreciate those of you who could take time out of your day to watch live or could take time later to watch the recording. All right, so if you are not familiar with Lutheran Service Builder, just a quick overview. It is a web-based program that allows churches to quickly and easily plan services, create custom bulletin interiors, export presentations and playlists, and conform with copyright requirements. We're going to be focusing really on that first thing today. I guess the first two things: quickly and easily plan services, and most importantly, create custom worship bulletin interiors. And we say interiors because we're not going to talk about the cover at all. We're going to talk about the service itself and how to customize that for your church, knowing that what is in the hymnal is great, but every church is a little bit different, and the things that you might choose to print or share with your congregation will change depending on your church. All right, so a few assumptions I make about you, or I have made about you before I started today. I am assuming you understand at least the basics of the liturgy, if not more. We're not going to be explaining which each of these terms means. So there might be, if you're not familiar with the liturgy, there might be a few things that go over your head, but that's okay. You'll still get a lot out of it today. I'm also assuming that you're new to the online Lutheran Service Builder, and that's a pretty safe assumption since we just launched it this summer. However, we've got a number of field testers who have been using it since the beginning of the year, and some people who were one of our early adopters that when we did the early release for it for current customers. So you might have been using this for a few months. There'll still be some tips and tricks along the way that I'm sure will be helpful to you, but this is really geared towards the person who is just getting up and running with this new version. I'm also assuming that you do have a subscription or at least a free trial, because it's always easier to follow along with me as I go through this software. So if you don't have a subscription or a free trial, you can start your free trial right now at lutheranservicebuilder.com, and it'll give you access to essentially everything you need to follow along, with the exception of exporting to Word or any sort of export for that matter. So that's the last step. That's not the most important part of the training today. Really, it's everything leading up to that. So I invite you to follow along if you don't already have an account set up. All right, now is the chance where I get to ask you to tell me a little bit about yourself. And I'm going to share a poll here. And if you don't mind answering this, the question is, please select the option that most closely describes your primary role at church. We know a lot of people wear multiple hats in the church, so I'm just asking about your primary role. Every now and then I'll have a pastor who says, well, I'm a pastor, but I also operate as the church secretary and the custodian as well. So please put your primary role. I know that there's many different things you do in the church. All right, well, this is very good. Thank you very much for voting. The vast majority of you are in that administrative role. So we've got several dozen people here, but more than 70% are in the administrative role. And that makes sense given the time of day that we're at and the subject that we're talking about. So we've also got a good number of pastors as well as church musicians here. So thank you very much for letting me know that. And then my next question for you is just to get me an understanding of if you are currently using, and I should have clarified in here, are you currently using the new online version of Lutheran Service Builder in your congregation? So yes or no, but planning to subscribe soon. And if you are not currently using it and you're looking to subscribe soon, just know that this is a nice, easy transition to the online version. There's no additional fees. We do have to update your subscription, but it's not going to cost you anything extra if you are already currently subscribed. So looks like very good. We are about most of the way there with our votes, and it's about 50-50. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll, and I can share that with you just so you have a quick idea. We've got about 50% who are already in there, about 28 no, and 20 planning to subscribe soon. Or yeah, 20, there we go, planning to subscribe soon. So that just lets you know that there's a mix of people here, and that's very helpful to me as well. All right, let's move forward. The outline for today is very simple. We're going to plan a service. We're going to select the worship elements. We're going to edit the formatting, how we choose to display them in the bulletin. And then we're going to export the content. And that last step is a very simple step. That'll only take a couple minutes. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch my screen here, make sure that is coming across good. Now I've got this zoomed in quite a bit. I'm at about 150%. I've got a rather large monitor with a great resolution, and so I like to zoom in for these presentations so that you can actually see what I'm doing. Just know that you can do that as well in your browser. If you have trouble seeing it, if the text is too small, you can just hit Control and scroll or Control and plus and make it as big as you need to. Lutheran Service Builder is what we call responsive, which means regardless of the screen size, it should be nice and visible. The only exception to that is that some things don't work on the mobile devices. They're not meant for that. The word processing sort of features or the actual bulletin planning. The service plan works great on your phone, but everything else is really meant for either a desktop, laptop, or tablet. So this is the church year calendar and the calendar for your services. And we are going to plan today the 18th Sunday after Pentecost, which is coming up here on September 23rd. So what I'll do is I'll click on that date on the calendar, and this will pull up the propers for the day. The readings are all listed out, as well as things such as the intro and the collect, the gradual, the verse, all of that for this specific day in the church year. So you can preview those ahead of time without planning the service. Again, this works great on your phone. If you're in a planning meeting, you want to just see what the verses are, what the readings or the theme of the day is, you can go view the propers. From there, to begin planning the bulletin, we're going to go to the top right corner and click Plan this service. Click that button there, and the screen will now change to our service plan mode. This is a relatively new thing for Lutheran Service Builder. We released the service plan late last year as kind of a standalone tool within what we called then Lutheran Calendar. It wasn't the full service builder at that point, but now it is. And so this allows you to plan out your services in advance at a rather high level. So the readings are already put in place for you based on the lectionary, but you can change those readings and see, like if we wanted to change the gospel reading for the day, we could delete that and add a reading and say, change that to something from Luke, Luke chapter 5. I'm not really sure what's in Luke chapter 5, but if I wanted to look at that, I can see, oh, well, in the one-year lectionary for Epiphany 5 or Trinity 5, Luke 5, 1 through 11 is chosen. So I could pick that. That probably doesn't fit with the other readings. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'll click Add Reading, and it'll still, when I reset my search, it'll give me the suggested readings for Pentecost 18. So I can go back and add that mark in. So chances are you're not going to change the readings too much. You might want to add a reading or change one of those, and you can add as many as you want. So it will pre-assign those to those readings based on the type of reading it is. But if you add a bunch of gospel readings or something outside the norm, you may have to select that once you get into the actual bulletin. Now, hymns is very similar, except we don't pre-select the hymns for you because that's not part of the lectionary. Now, there is a hymn of the day that we consider a proper. You can see here, this one is 851, Lord of Glory, You Have Bought Us. So I'll use that in my service today for the hymn of the day, so I'll select that. Then I'll go and click Add Hymn, and you can see there's hymns for the readings, Where Charity and Love Prevail. In my very short time with the choir up at Concordia University, Wisconsin, that is one of the songs we sung. And that was a challenging one for me. And the whole choir experience was quite challenging for me. That is not one of the gifts God has given me. But that is one song that I certainly remember. So we'll select that today. Now you'll notice that there's also other suggested hymns. So while these hymns are tied directly to the readings based on the lectionary, I should clarify that if you change the readings, it doesn't change the selected hymns for the readings. Those are hymns for the readings of the lectionary. So those may or may not be as good of selections for the service. Certainly you'll want to use your expertise to select those hymns or your preferences. And then we also provide other suggested hymns that are based on the theme of the readings, not so much the exact verses. Now, we'll often get the question, well, who suggests those? And let me show you where these are coming from. So we're going to switch over to our browser, and at cph.org, I've pulled up the Worship Planning Book for Year B. This is a resource that our music department puts together on an annual basis. Using the 3-year lectionary, we don't have one for the 1-year lectionary, but using the 3-year lectionary, we'll pull together kind of some suggestions for every Sunday in the church year. Whoops. I thought I was already on September 23rd. Looks like I had scrolled too far. Here we go. So let me zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. So 18th Sunday after Pentecost, we have some readings with the themes, the hymn of the day, which we've already talked about, the collect, and then hymns for the readings and other hymns. So these match up with what's in Lutheran Service Builder. They were not exactly the same in Lutheran Service Builder 2, so that has been updated to be consistent across our different products. Now you'll see here that there is a theme for this week, and this is tied in with one of our other resources, Concordia Pulpit Resources, as well as with Creative Worship for the Lutheran Parish, another resource we provide. We've got a lot of different options here, but that provides a theme that'll help you really figure out what hymns to select, or also other music, that's on the next page, that might be appropriate for this day in the church year. So let's go back to Lutheran Service Builder and select a few other hymns. All right, well, the lamb is always a good one. Oops, I'm gonna go ahead. One thing that I tend to do is I'll select it and I just wanna keep clicking, but you do have to click add hymn, and then we can add the lamb, and then we'll add another one, draw near and take the body of the Lord. That's a good one for during the Lord's Supper. So what I've done is I've planned to use these hymns, but I haven't said where in the service. I'll do that in a few minutes. You can't do that during the service plan. This is just saying these are hymns that we're planning to use. You're not committing to those yet. And so this is good for long-range planning, where at the first glance, based on the readings and the themes, you might have selected hymns that you want to sing. But as you plan it out, you might have some other selections. You can always change that later on. The next thing on here is your order of service, which you don't have to select, but it's good to look ahead. One clever example that I heard from a church is that they use Divine Service Setting 1 on the first Sunday of the month, and Divine Service Setting 2 on the second Sunday, and 3 and 4 accordingly. And when there's that fifth Sunday, we have Divine Service Setting 5. That's certainly not the intended use, but it's not a bad use of that either. So we'll go ahead and click on where it says empty. And on the right, it'll allow us to select any of the services within Lutheran Service Book. So there are the divine services and those 5 settings. There's also the daily office or other services, seasonal services, and at the very bottom, you would have what is called your custom services or custom liturgies. We're going to take a look at that in a little while. But I'm going to go ahead and just select divine service, setting 1, and we'll use that for today. Finally, additional rites. If there is some special occasion that is coming up on this day, and you know that in advance, you might want to go ahead and plug that in, such as a holy baptism. That's really just for the service plan, so that as you're looking ahead, you have an idea of what's going to be included that day. Now, we do provide a notes section for anything that kind of goes outside of this. So like if Sunday school children will be singing at the 10:30 service, something like that. You could put that note in there. Anything that really helps you plan the service that isn't included can go in the note. It's just an open text field that allows you to really plan ahead. All right, so that's it. If you needed to make changes or you wanted to change the name, so you can click this link down here, change name, date, or holiday. Maybe you were planning for one day and you meant for it to be a different day, maybe a funeral or something like that. You can choose which holiday. It'll look through the octave of the church year. It actually goes beyond that. You can see here 9 days earlier is the Holy Cross Day. I believe that's this Friday. Pentecost 17, Matthew, Michael, and all angels. So that doesn't change too much, although the suggested readings for that do change. And then there's other special occasions that you might want to use. So just trying to be as helpful as we can to give you the best possible path forward. And then maybe you just want to change the name that is shown internally and change 18th from written out to the numbers. You could do that too. So, all right, I think that's everything with the service plan. If you have any questions on that, please go ahead and put that in the chat. Actually, we've got, oh yes, thanks, Lisa, for the suggestion to point at the little box to the right. Sometimes I forget about this because we don't have a lot of information in this test account, but to the little box to the right here, right now it says NA. What that would do is show you the last time that hymn was used. So as you're planning out services, you'll start to see this pre-populate with different information about the last time this hymn was sung. So we could do a quick look and I could give an example of that. Let's see which days. Looks like I haven't planned these out too much. Maybe that's why it's empty. I won't go too far because that'll take me off, but it's our new solution for what we call statistics, where it shows you the information about that hymn. Here's one right down here. Draw near and take the body of the Lord. So it says 5 weeks. Last used 5 weeks before the service on August 19th, Pentecost 13. So that gives you some context to that. So thank you, Lisa, for suggesting that. That's a good thing to point out as you're planning the services. All right, next, we're going to go and click Prepare Bulletin. And when I click Prepare Bulletin, right now it's kind of in the mid right. If the search wasn't here, it'd be in the, oops, Oh, I did forget to say this shows you the search preview. If I click outside of this, it'll be in the top right. There you go, prepare bulletin. And that'll take me to the bulletin view. Now this looks very similar to a word processor, and it was designed in that way to give a very familiar feel, because we know that's the final place before you export a bulletin is your word processor, whether that's Microsoft Word on Windows or Mac or Pages or something like that. So it looks like a word processor, and it sort of behaves like it, but there's some key differences. We've got this ribbon up at the top, similar to what Microsoft has in their Office products, as a way to be more familiar, but it operates quite a bit different. Whereas in Microsoft, it's all about the formatting. This is more about the overall elements. You see, as you go through here and hover over, each individual element will have a light blue box around it to say this is a package right here. And there are dozens of them throughout the service. You'll see here this first one, confession and absolution, is what we call a heading. That shows up in the ribbon when you click on it, and you can choose to move it or delete it. Hymn of invocation is next. That is saying this is the spot in this liturgy where you will select the hymn of invocation. Now when you click on that, you still get the ribbon up here, but you also on the far right get your search box. This is where you can start adding in those hymns. And each one of these, depending on what type of element, will have a slightly different experience. So here we've got the hymn, and we can say, all right, here is our service plan. These are the 4 different hymns that we selected for the hymn. Now, down here, you'll still get the hymn of the day, the hymns for the reading, the other suggested hymns. That is all still there for you. But now you also get your service plan. So it just makes it that much better. And when you hover over something, it'll show you down below that, oh, this is the hymn of the day. So I'm going to go ahead and select where charity and love prevail to begin, and that'll put it in there. Now, there's other ways of searching in here, and this search is a powerful tool, and we have more training on that available. But I'll give you a quick example. So in the worship planning book, you might have remembered that this is called Proper 20, this readings or set of readings. So we could say holiday, type that in and add a colon, and then we'll put in quotes Proper 20. When it gets to be green, that means it's a valid search. And I can hit enter, and it'll show me what is assigned for this Proper 20. And it'll say 3-year lectionary A. You might remember we're in 3-year lectionary B. So we'd scroll down to that. But then we can also do something like topic and say, all right, what is the topic? Well, we're doing the beginning of the service. And I don't even have to type it all. I can just go down here and click, and it'll add that criteria to my search. And I'll click enter, and it'll say, all right, well, these are hymns that are good for this day in the church year and this part of the service. So I'm going to go ahead and say, oh, open now thy gates of beauty is a great way to start off. So I'm going to select that instead, and that'll change right here. So again, search is very powerful, and there's a lot of different ways to search. If you clear the search and type, you begin to type in there, it'll show you how to search and how to narrow your search. So there's a lot of great tools there. I'm not going to get into that all now because we'll be here all day. All right, so I've selected this hymn. Now let's get into a little bit of that custom bulletin. We right now have it set up to show the text, and that is based on under document, our bulletin format. Our bulletin format, which we'll edit in a little while, determines exactly how things should show by default. When you first put it in, that's how it'll show. But when I click on it, and I go to this tab here, which shows that hymn, I can have other options here. So I can say, well, let's show the melody instead. There we go. There's 1 through 5, verses 1 through 5. That's maybe a few too many. We don't want to start off the service with 5 stanzas. So let's take out stanzas 2 and 4 or something like that. You can select those, and it'll remove them right from in line. This is extremely powerful, and we have updated this within the new online Lutheran Service Builder so that all stanzas are now engraved to the melody. And that was one of the suggestions that we frequently heard with Lutheran Service Builder 2 was, well, why can't all of these be engraved? Well, we went through and engraved them. They just weren't for the hymnal. As you might know from the hymnal, you'll have the first 4, maybe 5 stanzas engraved, and everything after that would just be the text. Well, we've given you the option of both now for all stanzas across the board. So that's a great addition with the new version. You can also choose to display or not display the caption. Or if you want, you can click in the caption and do things like maybe remove the numbers. You could even put in here, so this has some shortcuts in there. So this is hashtag, or depending on your generation, you might call it pound. My millennial generation knows that as a hashtag, and whatever knows why there's a pound sign on old phones. Why would you have a pound sign or a hashtag sign when you can't text? Silly things like that. But we could do hashtag page, hashtag, and then stanzas, and that would say LSB 901 stanzas 1, 3, and 5. So you've got some different options, and again, there's training available for that. There's also our help center to give you some of those shortcuts. If you go down here in the lower right hand corner for I, and that allows you to browse our help center. You can even send our team a message there too. So there's again, a lot more that we can do here, but I want to get into some more of this custom formatting. So let's go back up here to this heading. This, I think, is a good example where it's helpful to have, but without an explanation, it might start to cause some confusion. So why would you have a hymn after confession and absolution before the words that you have there? So we could choose to delete this right now just by clicking delete. And then you'll have other things in here like stand. Sign of the cross may be made. These are called rubrics. I'm sure you're familiar with them. If you know the liturgy at all, they tell you what to do. But not all rubrics are needed. For example, the sign of the cross may be made by all in remembrance of their baptism. That might be standard practice in your church, or maybe it's not. But if you don't want to include that, you can hit the delete button up here, or just delete on your keyboard, and it'll delete there as well. All right, looks like I might be having a little bit of problems with the with my webcam. Hopefully it's giving me a message, so hopefully that doesn't distract you too much. All right, next up, we're going to go ahead and add captions to certain parts of this. So in here we have there the invocation in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, amen. We could put that caption there. But then we have here what's called the exhortation, and I'm guessing that's not as familiar as confession and absolution. You see, we have exhortation, then kneel or stand, silence for God's word, and self-examination, and then we have the confession of sins, and below that we have absolution. So we could name all of those. It starts to get a little cluttered, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, depending on how you choose to do that in your congregation. But your congregation might see that all as part of it. That might be how you've shown them that this is all part of confession and absolution. So you might go in here and say confession and absolution, and then maybe you remove the kneel or stand because we already have everybody standing. Delete that. And silence for reflection on God's word and self-examination is good. Let's keep that in there. But let's just remove the captions from each of these and make this appear to be one set. And in fact, we'll just go ahead and remove the sub-caption there. You see, this is providing you a way of formatting that's a little bit off from the hymnal in terms of the format itself without removing the elements themselves. And I think that's a good way of going about it. All right, so then you'll see here, we have absolution in there. If you have, like at my congregation, we have a vicar, and sometimes on non-communion Sundays, on a Saturday night, vicar might be leading it by himself. And so it gives pastor a break before the Sunday service. And so rather than the absolution, we might want the declaration of grace, which goes in there. Now, I can explain that to you. That might not be something you want to explain while you're in the middle of the service, although some people may certainly ask, why are the words a little bit different? So it's a good teaching opportunity, but you may not want to take that opportunity this week. And so by not having the captions show, it doesn't give any questions, it's just part of the service. So we'll go ahead and switch that back to absolution for now. All right, now we've got the service of the word, which is next. And that, again, you might choose to delete that. We will today. I want some examples of customization here. And then we're already still standing at this point. So I'll just remove that rubric. Then we have the introit, and again, we have this option to do something different. The blue bar on the left-hand side with the arrow allows you to click and see these different options there. So we may choose to do the introit or the psalm or an entrance hymn, or you could remove that element altogether. I'm going to choose the introit. I'll just keep that in there. Then we have the Kyrie, the Gloria, and Excelsis. Again, another option box that we could go in and try something different. And then the salutation and the collect for today. So the collect of the day is for Pentecost 18. You might have a different prayer that you put in there, and that's okay as well. All right, then we finally sit for the readings, and there is the Old Testament reading. Now, this is a new kind of customization with this new online version, what we call templates. So right now it just says Old Testament reading with the reference on the right and the subcaption, the reading itself, and this is the word of the Lord. Well, up here in the ribbon, you have the template drop down, and it's just the standard response, which says content, and then this is the word of the Lord, thanks be to God. Well, if you scroll down, there's some other options, and this one says with introduction, Old Testament. If I click on that, it will say the Old Testament reading is from Jeremiah chapter 11, and then it'll put the reading and the response at the end. So that's kind of nice. We've got the psalm here. In the psalm, you have the pointing, and you could have different tones. So maybe you want to go with psalm tone D. It would put psalm tone D in there while still showing the pointing. Or maybe you don't have that at all and everybody just reads it and you don't need the pointing. You can take that off as well. Oops. There we go. That clears that out. Then we've got the epistle, and again, we have a template for that. We can go down and say with introduction for the epistle, and that'll put that in there. We'll go down a little further. We stand for the Alleluia and the verse in the Holy Gospel, and that one by default has the template with the introduction and a response, and then also at the end. So continuing down, we have the hymn for the day, which we can go ahead and select from either the service plan or from the suggestions. And we'll have the sermon after that. We can put in a sermon title over here. I'm just going to do sermon title right now and plug that in. You could put whatever you'd want there. And then we stand for the creed, which is another option, or option box, if you will. We'll keep it as Nicene. And now we'll get down to the prayer of the church. Now, the prayer of the church, there's a number of ways you can do this. You could just have that here and the pastor or the worship assistant is up there leading the prayer, or you might want to print it all out. That's what my church does. So you could create your own prayers and add those in either as a custom element, I'll show those in a little bit, or you could do it once it exports to Word. Either one of those is a little bit time consuming. I've got another suggestion for you that might save you some time. The LCMS Worship Office puts together a prayer of the church. They call it Let Us Pray. And it's a new one for each week in the church year. And it's used by hundreds of churches across the synod. And they share that as a Word file. Well, we take that Word file, convert it to Lutheran Service Builder format, and make that available for free on our website. So if you go to LutheranServiceBuilder.com, you'll get to this site, and you can scroll all the way down. And down in the lower footer, that's a little bit redundant. In the footer, you can see a link for downloads. When we click downloads, it'll take you to our download page where you can get the Let Us Pray files for each day in the church year, or each of the upcoming days. We're getting a little close to the end of the month now. So September 23rd, I think by the end of this week or end of next week, you'll see another group out there. But we'll go ahead and we'll download the three-year file for the 23rd, the 18th Sunday after Pentecost, and it'll give me a zip file that downloads to my browser. And when I click on that, it'll open up and I can move that file to my desktop. Just drag and drop it over there and go back to Lutheran Service Builder. And then I'll go up to settings here, the cog up in the top right, and say import from LSBX file. And I'll click that. and it'll say, what file do you want? And I'll move it to my desktop, and there the file is, and I'll open it. Now it's going to tell me I've already imported this because I've done this training before already and I've practiced for it, so it's already been imported. But if you haven't done this, it'll just say it has successfully imported. So I'll close that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and insert it. So I'll click Insert Element. And you may ask, well, why can't I just click on Prayer of the Church? Well, because that is different for every day and it's not a proper that we know of that we can store in here, it won't show automatically. And so that right there is just a caption. But if we insert it as an element right below it, and then search for Pentecost 18, I believe that's what it is. Actually, let's search for it by date, September 23rd. There we go. That's how it's in there. September 23rd, 2018, Series B. This is a custom liturgy element. When I select that, the prayer of the church will display. And again, this is pre-written, and actually I've already updated this. You can see in here, it's got our Missouri District President, Lee Hagen. So that has been modified by me in our last training. I forgot that I did that. So I'll go ahead and delete this caption for Prayer of the Church because now that's redundant, and I have this all entered in. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, that was kind of hard to find. Why is it out of the way like that? You know, why do I have to go down to the footer in our website and everything? Well, what we offer is if you sign up, you can receive email notifications here. So you can enter in your email address, submit that, and then every time we have updated those files, we'll send you an email. You can go ahead and download them at once, import them in, and that way it's always waiting for you. And that happens once a month. So that's my recommendation to you. If you haven't already done that, go to our website, go to the downloads page, sign up to receive email updates, and we'll send that to you at that time. And please know that this is just for the Let Us Pray files. By giving us your email here, it doesn't mean we're going to send you emails about everything. It's just about this. All right, let's go back to Builder. Wow, we're already at 36 minutes. I got to go a little quicker. I apologize. There's so much cool things to talk about. And I'm glad to see that we've got some questions coming in there. So we'll answer those questions a little bit later on. All right, so let's follow down here. We have the rubric for the passing of the peace. We're going to go ahead and delete that just to provide some more customization to this. Get down to service of the sacrament. We've been deleting headings just to keep the whole bulletin a little bit shorter, so I'll delete that. And then as we get down here into the distribution, a lot of this is just rubrics or explanation, and there's a good reason to include that on a fairly regular basis for guests and visitors. But in the interest of space, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these rubrics. Delete that rubric. This is the, I forget exactly what that's called, the words that the pastors and the communion assistants say as they are distributing the Lord's Supper. That is great to say. I don't want to take that away, but it doesn't necessarily need to be printed in the bulletin. So by deleting that, that doesn't mean that we are going to not use that. That just means it's not going to be printed. So we'll delete that rubric as well. Everything, so it just says distribution. Oops, there we go. Like the dismissal. Most people will not have their bulletins up there, but everybody pretty much knows to say amen after the pastor has dismissed them. So now we'll add the distribution hymns in here as well. And now I think we'll use the Lamb and then also draw near and take the body of the Lord. Very good. So now these again are coming in as text. That's our default. We'll change that in a few moments. I think that's about it. We have the hymn to depart. I forget about that because that is not always included in that. In fact, in the hymnal, that's not included. We had so many requests for it that we added that to the divine services because it is pretty typical, even if it's not constant. Not everybody uses that. So that's where we'll put Where Charity and Love Prevail. So I've got all 4 of my service plan hymns plus 1 more at the beginning. And we're in good shape for this service. In fact, if we wanted to now, we could go ahead and click Document and Export. And then we can export it as what's called a docx file. That's the Microsoft Word format that can be used in a number of different processors. You have a rich text format, which can be used in even more word processors. That's kind of a generic standard. Or an HTML file, which if you want to put this up on your website, you could. We'll do a docx format right now just to show how it exports, and then we'll move into bulletin formats. So I'll open that up. Let me make sure that's showing. All right, there we go. And we did change that first one. We kind of overrode the defaults to show the, let me enable editing. That might be something you get in your Microsoft Word, the protected view for any files downloaded off the internet. All right, so you can see that there. Whoops, that's kind of, I applied a quick style accidentally for that. Okay, so there is that, and right now it's on 8.5 by 11 paper, I believe. So a lot on each page, and I haven't seen too many bulletins handed out by 8.5 by 11 not folded. So that's kind of a problem with the default, but that's okay. We can change that easily. So that's what it looks like in Word, which is really good. And there's some little things on here that Word may not understand, like the formatting on the Nicene Creed, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. All right, let's go back to Builder and let's look at this formatting. Well, actually, before I do that, let's talk about the order of service. We made those changes, and it's an override for this service of Divine Service Setting 1. I can save this as mine. And our fictional church for today is Resurrection Lutheran Church. Resurrection DS1 modified. That's what I'm going to call that. So when I click that, that means that this order of service with the headings removed, with some of the rubrics removed, is now a modified order of service. And I can go and access that under my worship resources, under my liturgies. You can see it there, and I can see that outline. It'll pull up in just a second. There we go. You can see the outline of this service, and I can reuse this outline over and over again. And so those changes that I made to customize it to meet this church's needs can be done over and over again, week in, week out. Now, if you use multiple divine services, which I'm guessing most of you do, you may need multiple customized liturgies to account for those changes, but you set that up the first time, and then you can always go back to it. And just a side note, if you're moving from Lutheran Service Builder 2, any custom liturgies that you set up in there will flow over into this new version too. All right, let's go to bulletin formats now. I've been teasing that for a while. So we'll close out of this. Remember, the bulletin format is on this document tab, just like order of service. But we've only got a few here. What I can do is I can click edit and go and edit the default order of or bulletin format. Now, what I would probably recommend doing is keep those defaults in there. You can always get them back if you delete them. But I'm going to do a new format based on default. And we're going to call this Resurrection Standard size. All right, we'll click that. So now it's right now currently the exact same as our default, but I'm going to make some modifications to it. So you have three types of modifications, and these used to be separate. They're all combined into a bulletin format now. You have your style, which is really the formatting of the text, the font family, the size, the spacing, all of that is under style. Layout talks all about the paper. You know, how are you printing this? How do you want this positioned on the paper? That sort of thing. And then content is the really powerful way of defaulting how it's displayed. So let's look at these one at a time. The first one is styles. So you have different sections that you can do. So like the body, the heading, the captions, subcaptions, rubrics, and copyrights. Let's look at the captions first. And we may want to do a little bit more formal one. So let's see, what is a good formal one? We could do a Times New Roman is a good one that's a little bit more formal. I want to go through and we are going to do, I'm going to do Garamond. There we go. So that keeps it nice and format. It's a serif font. I'm going to bump that up to 14, make sure that that's bold. And then I can always add a little bit of spacing underneath it too. That's for the paragraph spacing. That's not just for the caption. All right, now I'm going to go to the body and I'm going to make that a sans serif. We're going to make that trebuchet. That doesn't look too bad. I probably wouldn't go with that, but for an example purpose, it shows it. And I can make that go up to 11 size font. And the spacing looks okay now. We can add a little bit of paragraph. That's probably too much. You can change the line height for that type of paragraph if you wanted to. I could also change the color. Let's go to the rubrics. And the rubric, which will also go with the Trebuchet MS, we can go in here and make that red like all good rubrics should be. There we go. You could also put some text before or after that. Sometimes having like the cross in there is good for captions or other things. However you want to do that. You could even say rubric if you wanted to. That's probably a little bit redundant as well, but I'm going to go ahead and save those. Now I'm going to go into layout, and we're going to say that this is a legal size piece of paper, and we're going to do it landscape and folded. I think that's one of the most common ways of exporting bulletins for print. And I think our margins are good, and the music we could choose to automatically scale. I think that's a good way of going. And that now, as we go into content, we got to actually tell it to display music. So we've got things like saying all headings are visible or not visible. I removed the headings before. I could do that with the bulletin format too. I could just say not visible. And then rubrics, we do keep those visible, but if you didn't want rubrics, you could take those out too. I think rubrics are probably a good thing to include. Now hymns, we could say, do we want that all text or the melody display? That's where we want to switch the melody. Now we could say default caption always on. Well, caption is always on or never on. So I'm going to put the default for those just so that it displays. And then the caption format, you could say name or the role and the names, like Hymn of Invocation 655, Lord keep us steadfast in your word. And then the sub caption could be stanzas. So depending on the preferences, you might want to change some things. You can also choose to not show stanza numbers. Now that is just for if you have it in text. If you have the melody, that displays because these are predefined images. All right, next we have the liturgy, which are different elements of the liturgy where you could choose to show the melody, or if there is the full score, you could put that in there, the setting. I'm going to just choose text for right now. And then propers, which includes the readings. We had a question about this, about the verse numbers on the readings. If you want to choose to display them or not display them, you have that option there. You can also say that whether the words of Christ should be in red or not. And then you can choose to show the headings from the ESV Bible or not. Lots of different options there. And it's all tied in, again, to the propers. So some of those, like verse numbers, will not apply to all propers, of course, but for some. So you have this option to choose how things are displayed. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save and close out of this. It takes a second sometimes. Go back to my document and choose my bulletin format as Resurrection Standard Size. And when I change my bulletin format, my entire service folder or worship bulletin changes. And you can see now all my defaults go into play. The hymns begin to display. The font has changed. The size has changed. Even the paper size has changed. All of that is based on my bulletin format. And then all of the elements that are there or not there are based on my order of service. So you've got this combination of format and order of service, and then any things you choose to add to the service to override defaults, and that becomes your custom worship bulletin. And you can reuse these time and time again. And in fact, I think one of the questions is related to this. You can do multiple formats and use it for the same service. So if you're doing a bulletin format and you want it to be very much a pastor's bulletin as opposed to everyone else, you could say, all right, take this Resurrection Standard one, copy it, and say Resurrection Pastor's Bulletin. And so that might be something where pastor knows these hymns by heart. We don't need to show the melody, but he does want to see the words in a little bit larger print. So if we go to body, we can bump all of that up to 14. Yeah, we'll leave it at 14. And then the headings or the captions, we can bump those up. And maybe pastor prefers to have everything as trebuchet, so we can just do trebuchet MS, bump that up to 16 or 18 so that he can see that. You can continue to make it. Maybe his goes actually in a binder, and so you do want that to be a letter size and portrait and not folded, because you're going to put that in the binder. And maybe then, because it's going in the binder, you want to give it wider left and right margins if you are doing both sides of that. If you're not doing both sides, if you two-sided, you could just bump the left margin to 1.5 or something like that. So then you can save this, and then after you have exported your standard worship folder or worship bulletin, then you can go to the document and say, give me the pastor's version. And now that's ready to go. You can do as many of these formats as you want. You could have an outlined format for people who just want to use the hymnal and have the outline in there. You could have a full version with all the rubrics and all the descriptions if you wanted to. Lots of different options for you there. All right, well, we are right at the 50 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint slide and remind you again, you can start your free trial at LutheranServiceBuilder.com. And let me talk for a moment about converting to the new online version. I know about half of you are not on the online version, and I'd highly recommend you move to that because it's very powerful. We're going to continue to improve it, and everything in version 2 should be in this online version exactly, well, not necessarily exactly, but it should be there to accomplish the same goals. Some of them have changed. Some of the processes are different. As you've seen, it's a very different interface, but the end results are the same, and there's more. So I highly recommend you do it. And the way to do that would be to sign up for an appointment, a quick 10, 15-minute appointment with a software consultant. I'll put this link right in the chat for everybody. What you'll do during that conversation is you will receive a new license agreement. So the software consultant will send you a new license agreement. You may need to align your subscription date. So if you have the builder license and the hymn license, and they're starting and ending at different times, we're going to try to get those on the same schedule. Makes it easier for you, makes it easier for us. That'll just keep it all nice and aligned. So we might have a prorated credit to apply to your account or a charge to apply to your account to align those subscriptions. But what you're paying on an annual basis will not change at all. There is no price increase to move online. Then they will turn on your access to the new version and send you instructions for how to get started. And they can also answer any questions that you have for them, very specific questions that might only apply to your church. All right, so that is my recommendation. Go ahead and click on that link that I put in the chat. Here's my contact information again, as well as our support team. And now, while you have that up on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and review our questions so I can answer some of those for you. If you have any other questions at this time, please go ahead and put them into the chat. So let's see. Lisa, thanks again for pointing out the statistics as well. All right, Pastor Henrik is asking, regarding hymn selection, is there the ability to search for hymns by an operative word either in the title or somewhere in the text of the hymn? Well, I'm glad you asked that. That is, for me, kind of a softball question, because yes, absolutely you can do that. That is one of the great things. So let's go and take a look at the search. There is the how to search here where you can search for any words or exact phrases. And I like to do thy strong word. So if I type in thy strong word, you'll see I've got some different options there that I could pre-select. But I'm just going to type that in and click enter. And you'll see here that the hymns that show up for thy strong word, one is based on the title of thy strong word. Then we have Eternal Father, strong to save. Then we have Lord of all nations, grant me grace, which includes those words in it. And you can see the preview there. That is looking for any of those words in there within the hymn. Now, if I go and put that in quotes and then hit enter, it's looking for that exact phrase, and that'll put that in there. That's only one result that comes up. So now you'll notice here that my caption has been modified already. So that is one thing to watch out for, is the caption on there. So you might want to put in there, go ahead and rechange it to thy strong word or something to that effect. Maybe 578 thy strong word. So otherwise, if you were just going and inserting a new hymn in there, the caption will come up right away. Thy strong word. We'll put it in quotes, search, add that in, and there we go. Now, what's nice is it'll also warn you if you've used it more than once. But yeah, that's how you search. So I hope that answers your question, Pastor. All right, Kevin asked the question, this is the one I saw, is there a way to create a detailed version for pastors and a less detailed one for congregational use? So that we showed the bulletin format. You might have something where it displays, you have different elements in there that go into more detail. In that case, you might want to have two different versions of the liturgy that are very similar, but that's kind of twice the work. So I think in most cases, the bulletin formats will work just fine for you. And before, I don't know if I showed you the navigation, you can do the edit the format here, or you can go up to the cog and click bulletin formats in that navigation, and that'll take you there. All right. So Renee says, we do the intro responsibly. Can the P and C be put in there? So let's go down to the intro. Oops, we'll close out of this. Not by default, but I can show you a few different options of what you can do. So the intro it, when you select on that, you do have some templates where you can say the pastor says it all, or the congregation, or the assistant. So if you're wanting to say it all as one, but you did say it, you do it responsively. So one way to do that would be to copy that. You could create a My Worship resource and go under My Common Elements and do that. That's probably a little bit more work than you're looking for, but it works. You can go and add a common element, intro it for September 23rd. I believe when you paste it in there, yes, oops, uh-oh. Well, that's a fun one. I haven't had that error before, I think because there's special characters. Always fun when I get an error on the screen. The good thing is the errors are all automatically reported to our team, and they'll handle it from there. But you can put in things, so you could copy and paste it in here and then choose your responsorials. So you can say people or pastor in there. So that's one way to do it. You could save that and then insert it. It's a little bit more work, but it's probably a better experience than doing that in Word and adding those yourself. So I hope that helps, Renee. All right, Anna Maria is asking about the indentation. I don't care for the font style for indentation. Can I change the default from the start and move all text to shift left with no indentation? Anna Maria, I'm wondering if you're meaning all indentation or just specific elements. But as a general rule under bulletin formats, we'll go to here, standard size. So if you are going to the body, you might want to change that indentation. So you'll see that here. That actually, I believe, no, that's the page indentation. Yes, here we go. Under paragraph, under body, you can change the indentation here down to 0, and that'll move it all to the left. Now, some things you may still have indents depending on how they are, like here, the gospel. Jesus' words there are indented to the right. That won't fix all of that. But as a standard for that section, that paragraph section, which is body, you can change that indentation here. So we're looking at other ways of removing indentation. So for example, the Lord's Prayer has kind of the poetic format or the Apostles' Creed, and you may want to condense that. So we're looking at ways of doing that and providing more options. But as a standard, you can go and choose the indentation for these different sections. Janet is asking which version of Microsoft Word is needed using Word 2010. 2010 will be just fine. The docx format that we have for Word, I believe, was introduced in the 2007 format. I know you're using 2010. If anyone is using an older version or a different kind of word processor, the rich text format might be a better way to go. Many different word processors will support docx formatting, but we also include rich text for those who don't. And so I think that also, yeah, Janet asked, can this be exported into Publisher? It cannot be exported into Publisher, and that's due to some restrictions with Microsoft Publisher and the information they share on how to structure that file format. That schema, as you would call it, is not publicly available like the docx format is. They make that available, but they really hold that Publisher format close. So you can import Word files into Publisher. It's not a perfect process, but it's what Microsoft provides. But we don't have that option to export to Publisher because of the restrictions Microsoft puts on it. I know that creates a challenge for you. It's just a challenge we have to deal with because we have no alternative at this point. All right. Carrie's asking, how can I enter a psalm text which comes from hymnlicense.net? That is probably a bit more advanced than what we're talking about today, but I'll give you the starting point, which again is under My Worship Resources, up here under the cog, My Worship Resources. And I'm thinking you're asked, yeah, psalm text. So I would put that under My Common Elements and go and create a new one, add a common element. And we'll just say psalm text. And you can put that in here and copy the text in and format it accordingly. You can add different names, captions, and such. We had an advanced training a couple weeks ago that goes into this in more detail. We'll have more in the future, but you can save these common elements and bring them into your worship service and use them again and again. Kind of like that prayer that we brought in. That is here as a common element and all formatted using the tools here, and that can be brought in. And then the fonts and all of that can change. So that's how I would recommend for that. Marcia's saying, is there a way to list all tune names with hymn name and number to print a master list for organists with the new LSB Hymn Prelude series? That is a really good question, Marcia, and I don't believe you can do that in here, although you may not need that with the Hymn Prelude series. There's a number of different things that shares with you, but if you are looking to show that, you can search certainly by the tune names. You have the listing of all the tune names here, or a sampling. You can start typing it in, and it'll update it from there. I believe we may even have that as an option. Let me go real quick to Lutheran Service Book.com. We have a number of different resources there, and I know this is kind of a bit outside our topic for today. Bear with me here as I come and look at the downloads. We have an alphabetical list of hymns. We have a topical list of hymns. I don't believe we have all the tune names. I do apologize for that. I'm not sure exactly what is in the within the Prelude series off the top of my head, but I will try to take note and ask our music team to get back to you, or I'll talk with them, see what we have available for you. We might have that available just to share, but I don't think there's any way of exporting all of that from Lutheran Service Builder. All right, let's see, a couple more questions here. Kim is saying, we use Creative Worship for the opening collect, preface, and closing prayer in our bulletin. How do I insert those versions or proper preface is what she's asking for. Let me show you real quick, and this will be our last question and answer for today. So Creative Worship for the Lutheran Parish, if you go to music.cph.org/creative worship, I can show you this real quick. You can also go to music.cph.org and click through the navigation to Creative Worship. And if you don't know what Creative Worship is, you might be very excited to see this. So under Creative Worship, well, actually, let me go back here a second. You could try a free service. I'm going to go ahead and go to digital and log in. Creative Worship is a kind of a supplement, if you will, for different worship elements. So, we've got Series C Q1. I don't think that's released to everybody. That's here in my testing. So you can get a quick, actually, I'll go into here for our current season. So I believe we are still in season, oh no, we're already in the fourth quarter. Wow. So Q4, for each season or each week in the church year, there is additional elements that can be included. So here, 18th Sunday after Pentecost, proper 20. If I go to choose the service, there's not only lots of great imagery and music that you can use for this, but you also have the LSBX file. So if I click on that, I can download this and show in folder. We'll move that to my desktop. There we go. Now I can bring that file in. So once you download the file from Creative Worship, you can bring that in through Lutheran Service Builder using the import from LSBX file. And I can bring that in. There's Pentecost 18. And now that will come in. This will import service Pentecost 18, continue. And then it'll bring that in here for me. So it's created that as a new service on that date. And it gives the suggested hymns, the readings, some additional notes and such. So there is a lot that can come into play here. And when I go to prepare the bulletin, all of those different elements are available for me. And I can search for them too. So like as we gather, you can see, I believe if I type in CW, it gives me the, oops, maybe not. Well, I'm not sure exactly how to search for each element with this new version. I'm still learning the Creative Worship import. The reason for that is that we're working on an even better solution right now. That'll be released by the year end, that's our plan right now, where you'll be able to access this all from within Lutheran Service Builder. So this import process, which is certainly clunky, and like I said, I'm not as familiar with it, will be improved and we'll have a better way. But you can get all of the Creative Worship service elements in through that LSBX format, which is how it was in Lutheran Service Builder too. So that's one way to bring it in, and you can change the other elements as you go through here, but this gives you that default template. So, and like I said, stay tuned. There will be an even better way coming soon. All right, so that, I believe, is the last question. Thank you so much for attending today. I've got my contact information on the screen if you think of something after the fact, or you can reach out to our support team. They're usually quicker in response to me because that's their entire job, is responding to those requests. But feel free to reach out to me as well. But I hope you were able to learn how to use the new online Lutheran Service Builder for creating custom worship bulletins for your church that can be used again and again. Thanks again, and have a great rest of the day.